Hi everyone, welcome back to What Is This Weapon? I'm Jonathan, and this is clearly a Luger of some kind. Now, I'm going to try to insist when we do the guessing thing on social media that we only accept specific answers, because this is at least 2 tiers of rare, which will become apparent as we go through. The most obvious thing, it's a carbine. So I'm sure some people are familiar with the LP08, Langen Pistola, sometimes called the artillery Luger. It's not strictly correct, but longer barrel and with a stock fitting. So you could put a paddle buttstock on it and use it as, well, a military carbine, essentially, pistol caliber, of course. Well, early on, really quite early on, from 1901, DWM were working on a hunting carbine version of the Luger pistol, having essentially only just perfected it. So the Swiss Luger, model 1900, which I was lucky to have some of as well, had come out as the first sort of really successful version of the Luger. The Swiss military bought a number of those. This has some early features that are common to that, which we'll go through in just a moment. So this is the original caliber, 7.65 by 21mm Luger, before the big switch to 9mm. The 9x19 having been invented for the Luger pistol, but not until 1908. This thing is, well, several years before that. Most likely made in 1903. So what the difference, well, I mentioned the LP08, that is just, the barrel is not so long that you need to make any special accommodation for it. You do with the carbine. Some of you might remember we covered the C96 carbine, or one of them, some time ago now, and I think I showed you then this isn't just for getting hold of the front of the gun, although that's useful. It also has a recuperator type recoil assist spring inside it. So, since I've mentioned it, let's very carefully pop off this fore end to show you that. So in here is a little spring plunger, and that helps assist the much heavier barrel and barrel extension and toggle assembly that would otherwise be a bit slow to come forwards and might cause a stoppage. So it has an assisting spring in here. And just as we're looking at it, even though only the owner is ever going to see the inside of this, this is still lovingly blued to a nice finish, which is always nice. And of course the wood is well nicely carved and checkered as well. It's one of these key style flat push pins to remove the fore end. And there's a sling swivel on the front to go with the swivel on the back on the butt. Now obviously the butt is removable as well, but we're coming to that. Where this fits the pistol, or the carbine I should say, we have this support bar here. And there's the slot for that key to come across and snugly secure that thing in place. Now this is, I believe, soldered onto the front of the frame, where normally it would just be this part of the frame with the serial number visible. And because that's covered up, there we see our serial number of this piece. And those of you who really know your Lugers might really see the significance of this from this serial number. So it's 9103C. There were only 10 of this range, of this type of carbine made. I've got slightly ahead of myself though. 2,500 of the, what's usually called the model 1902 carbine, were produced and sold. But there were earlier runs. So there was a 1900 carbine for Chile, I think it was. There were prototypes essentially, and they had some early features. And some of those have carried over into this. So 9101 to 91010C are this very, that's the next tier of rarity down from 2,500, which really isn't very much in the scheme of things, of this broad type. Then you've got the fact that only 10 of these were made, and then you've got the fact that this thing has this adjustable sight here right at the back on the toggle link. The rear link of the toggle. I'll skip straight to well, not a number of interesting features, but this one, this adjustable sight marked 135, 100 meters, 300 meters, 500 meters, adjustable by pinching and sliding. So if we slide it all the way out, you see it's on a little ramp, and that puts you at the maximum, which I believe is actually 550. So it's marked 1, 3, and 5, but it goes to a maximum of 550 and down to a minimum of 100. And you have this little latch in here that when you pinch, comes in, allows you to move it to the next increment, and it pops in to the next slot. So there we're on 300 meters. And with this sort of configuration, as I think I said in the C96 carbine video, even a normal C96 with the stock equipped, same for the artillery Luger, or certainly for something like this with an even longer barrel and a more secure stock, you could definitely make people quite concerned at 500 yards, 500 meters. Well, 400 yards we know from history, and then maybe out a bit beyond that as well. Having said that, these were originally conceived as 1901, 1902 as a hunting tool. They're not weapons for shooting at people with. They are for hunting small game, that kind of thing. So that I've kind of skipped straight to the really unique features, but in tandem to the rear sight, of course, there's a front sight. Now at this point, let me grab one of our normal, only 2,500 of those carbines, and we can do a direct comparison. So here is a normal, boring, ordinary model 1902 carbine, quite rare and important in themselves. So we're talking sights on the super rare version, transitional presentation grade is what we would call this, and there's a little giveaway to that I will show you shortly, but sticking to the features for the moment, there is the comparison. So the prototype hunting carbines and the first few, we think ours would be the last one to be made with this rear sight built into the toggle like this, have the sight at the rear, so put that back to the minimum there. And you can see the one at the rear is the normal quote-unquote arrangement. So you have a still adjustable sight, but it's 1, 2, and 3. So 100, 200, and 300 meters with an intermediate 250 there. And a push button two-handed job to adjust the sight on that. And going along with this more conventional sight position, so this is over the chamber, or just in front of the chamber, partly in front of the chamber. Going along with that is this pronounced ramp here, which is an anti-glare thing. So that is grooved, and you've got less reflection off the barrel, less light glare off the barrel that might interrupt your, in theory, quite careful aim that you're taking with this thing. So those are the normal sights on most of this 910 series range, and on the 2,500 conventional 1902 carbines. Now even this has a couple of early Luger features on it. So we'll revert to the star here because it has them too. So maybe the most obvious, I don't know, they're about as obvious as each other. It has these dished toggle ears. So this, you'll see these on the Swiss Lugers, the model 1900. Quite quickly they move away from this. So the way this is, the Luger was originally designed is you pull to the rear before you lift up. So pull back and then lift up to cock. I'll be a little bit gentle with this one. And that's because there's a latch built into the right hand cocking knob, ear, whatever you want to call it, that prevents it coming straight up. And that's to prevent it accidentally going out of battery and not firing, I believe. But that was solved otherwise later on, and they moved away from it. You have those probably more iconic now, fully checkered, constant thickness cocking ears on the later Lugers. But so that's an early feature that's on here. When you think this was designed 1901, the year after the 1900 Luger comes out, it makes sense it would still have that. And then the other early feature is the grip safety. So just like the 1911, but the 1911 kept it. The Luger did away with it. So by the time of the 1904 model German Navy Luger, that's gone away. And they just stuck with the manual safety there. The other big feature, of course, of Carbine is the butt stock, and that's another point of divergence from the normal 1902 model Carbine. This thing has a push-button stock with a single screw tang. This shoe, this attachment point here, just has the one screw, and it has a push button. I'll demonstrate that now. So you push in and you slide or rotate off, and that's the stock lug, of course, there on the grip. So this stock is quite different. Let's just show you the ordinary version. Not so ordinary, but nonetheless. So it's a strengthened by this point. So these are made from 1904, 5 sort of era. And they have a longer pair of tangs with double screws, clearly to reinforce. And they've gone for this lever approach. So you push the lever down and then you slide it off in a similar sort of way. So different arrangement. That means it has a cut in the stock attachment point there, which this very rare version does not. Just has a flat lug there, but what it does have is a cutout there to accommodate the push button. And that's because that moves across to lock it in. And I think these changes are really product improvement. So if all of the weight of the gun and of your force, your leverage on it as you try to use it for hunting or whatever else you use it for, that isn't a great deal of support for that latch there. So I think that's just a product improvement. It's not because it's a special Gucci Luger Carbine that it has that feature. It's just an early feature. And you see the stocks side by side there, quite a different approach. Push button on the transitional and the lever on the later version. Now in theory, you could use this thing as a sort of Luger hand cannon. Suddenly feels quite, I don't know, diesel punk, is that the right era? With the long barrel and the different silhouette from the fore end. And I dare say it would function if you tried to use it like that, but of course your accuracy is going to be all over the shop. And even if you try and two-hand it like this, no, not really what you'd want to do. You'd want to have the stock attached. So let's put that back on. Push the catch to assist it. There we go, that's back on. It's actually difficult to know what to specifically call this because it is the presentation grade model 1902 Luger Carbine. And thank you to Stephen Bloy, by the way, who got in touch with some information from the standard catalogue of Lugers by Davis, which has kind of hurried this along because it could have been years, decades before we finally got around to cataloguing this thing, or maybe I would have seen it on the shelf and gone, I need to do a video on that. But thank you to Stephen for making life quite a bit easier for us by sending that information. But it's maybe not fully what you would call presentation grade, and it's actually a little bit more unique than that at the same time. So the presentation grade Lugers typically have in gold, marking in gold on the chamber here, and dedicated to using initials usually to a known individual. So for example, Sir Hiram Maxim received one of these that was sold by Rock Island auctions a few years ago. Hugo Borchardt, who created the original version of this mechanism in the C93 pistol, received a slightly passive-aggressive gift from Georg Luger. Of course, is the famous designer of the Parabellum pistol, the Luger pistol. Georg Luger gifted the original designer of the mechanism that Luger had improved his own presentation example, which does feel a bit passive-aggressive, but maybe we're reading into that with modern sensibilities. Beautiful gift regardless. President Theodore Roosevelt received one as well, and I've read he actually took it out hunting on horseback, hunted from horseback using this thing and the very stable firing platform and quick handling that it provides, and of course rapid follow-up shots as well. It's the real advantage of these things. And they all have, right, so this doesn't have that. This doesn't have any known provenance to a recipient. It doesn't have a nice gold dedication of any kind on it. It has the presentation grade features like this version of the buttstock from the prototypes. It has the correct barrel length at 300 millimeters. All the right grade of walnut and checkering, the early toggle, the grip safety, all of that. And it also has the GL monogram. Very hard to see, unless you're right up close like I am, and hopefully you will be as well in a moment. Tiny little GL on the toggle there below. In this case, below the sight, because this one is one of those unusual, very early ones that has this sight at the rear. Otherwise, it would just be on the toggle link there. So that still qualifies this, per the catalogue, as a presentation grade example, but it doesn't have that sort of gold flourish because, I mean, you could look at it as a prototype. I will call it transitional. So those first three, we think, that had this early sight arrangement, I think I'm right in saying that none of those three were dedicated or presented to any known individual. I think they stayed with DWM. DWM, for those of you who don't know, one of the main makers of Lugers and where a lot of this development work was done, and their mark is on this link of the toggle as well. And that actually completes our sort of survey of this piece, because there are no other markings on this except for repeats of the serial number. We've got 9103 on down here on the stock shoe. That's about it. Some of these have Imperial German commercial proof marks on the side. This one doesn't. And neither does our other example here, but we may have one of our 5 that does. That's about it, really. But this is what I mean by tiers of rarity. Is your 2,500, your 10, and then one of, we think, 3 of the 10 that have the early features. And as a museum, in a way, we're sad that we don't have a personal connection, certainly to someone as important as Roosevelt or Maxim. But as far as sheer rarity goes, it's hard to argue with one of probably only 3 in the world of this particular Luger carbine. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to do the usual YouTube stuff. I know I don't always remember to say it, but liking, sharing, and subscribing as well, with YouTube being a little bit perplexing sometimes as to what it does with videos with guns in. You will probably want to subscribe to make sure that you get all of these. Check out our website, our social media accounts as well. And I'd just like to give a shout out to the Lithgow Small Arms Museum over in Australia. They are going through some very tough times at the moment. They are closed. There were some thefts. They need money to bring their security up to standard. So head over to their website, link in the description to that, or you can Google Lithgow Small Arms Museum. Please do what you can to help them out. They are our counterpart collection down there in Australia, and we really want to see them come back. But whatever you do, join us again here next week.